Well, thank you very much for joining us on a sunny but late afternoon. And this is really an important panel, as we've heard from all of the presenters. Talent is the key to success. So I'd like to sort of, rather than making a long opening comment, really come back to two things. When Michigan State was founded back in the 1800s, the idea was we would take the best of liberal arts education and couple it with the very practical and produce a graduate that could be good enough for the proudest and open to the poorest. It was a very simple concept, and we've sustained that over a period of time. So I want to think about how we connect to the workforce in ways not to say we simply have a gap, but what can we do to really add some meat to this conversation and find some concrete actions that we can all take to make the situation much more competitive for Michigan. So my first question is really to Jim Jacobs. You've been associated with Macomb Community College since 1967. You served as director of the Center for Workforce Development and Policy, and now you're president. So I'd like to have you think about the question, as a community college president who's been deeply involved in these workforce development issues, what's the most important assets the educational system has that we can leverage for greater effect?
Well, I think community colleges play a really important role for a number of reasons. First, we are really the centerpiece for a diverse set of learners. We have young people coming out of high schools looking for careers. We have dislocated workers or individuals who have stopped working and are coming back into the workforce after periods of maybe long unemployment. And third, we also have people who are in the workforce who want to increase their talent and their skills and move upward in the companies that they currently work for, or the sectors that they work for. So we're really important because we deal with all that diverse population. The second, and I think this is very important in Michigan, we're a very decentralized state in terms of our educational institutions, and we're also, I think, fairly decentralized in our employer base. What we really need to do, what way community colleges can serve best, is to bring kind of on a local level a consensus between business and education that would play a role in developing what are the local employment standards, what are the kinds of skill sets that are necessary to be successful in local economies. And third, and I think, again, very important, is that we serve as a way in which both communities, education and business, K through 12 up through post-secondary education, can work locally, with our students. One of the great advantages of community colleges is that the graduates of our institutions in the main work and live in the communities that our institutions are. So we, I think, play a huge role in the development of local talent for Michigan.
Bill, I want to turn to you both as a CEO of an important company in the biotech sector, someone who's been actively involved in the conversations about workforce development. Turn it around and think about, from an employer perspective, how can employers better leverage their assets in order to be able to have the workforce we need for the future?
So I'll take just a minute and tee up for everybody kind of what I do. So I operate a company in Kalamazoo, Michigan that does contract research for the biotech, pharmaceutical, and medical device companies. So as we know today, big pharmaceutical companies have the ability to start from the very beginning in research and drug development and run it all the way through to FDA approval or the international equivalent. That takes about 13 years. But that model doesn't work that well. So of course, as you all know, these biotechs have sprung up, a lot of medical device companies, and they're virtual companies. They don't do their own research. So they contract their research out to a company like mine. So we're the third largest now in the world, and on any given day we're doing regulatory approval research to prove safety for these new drugs of tomorrow, and well as efficacy that they work, for about 650 different companies. The way our company is set up, we hire a lot of students directly out of school, out of a life science program. They come from Western Michigan University, Michigan State University, and Kalamazoo Valley Community College. So it's similar to what programs you offer. Most of the scientific techs who come to us, it's their first job, their first full-time career job, their first step on a career. And they'll stay there on average 3 to 4 years. And at that point in time, they'll make a decision whether they want to move up the ladder within our company A lot of them will go back and get an advanced degree, and some of them will go work for some of our clients. They get asked by our clients who've come in to do the research to go and work for them. So it's a nice system to bring people from academia or from their childhood into the workforce so they can be, it wasn't working as we'd hoped. So we weren't exactly sure how to get that fixed. And of course, what's happened to we've got a great infrastructure of universities in our wonderful state, but of course, funding hasn't allowed for a lot of the programs that many of you want. So we just rolled our sleeves up and said, we've got to do something. So we got very active at first with Western Michigan University, who's in our community, as I indicated. And we took the students back to their departments and their department heads, and they relived what they, now that they've been at MPI for 3 years, what do they wish they'd have been taught when they were at Western? And that was very, very successful. So we've now taken that to Kalamazoo Valley Community College. And in that regard, now they've redesigned a lot of their programs, and we've allowed some of our senior scientists to become adjunct professors. And but it was something we had to do ourselves, and we're happy to do it, because actually, if we're going to solve this problem where there's better union between the supply and demand of labor, those of us who need the workforce ought to be actively involved with those institutions who train them. For many years, I'm also active with Stryker Corporation. I serve as their chairman, and we have a lot of employees in the state of Michigan. And our solution to their solution, our solution was the problem, was to just have our own training. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, we've already got great capabilities in these universities. So the way we're leveraging our assets to answer your question is by getting actively involved with those key institutions that really provide the talent to us, so that they know exactly what they want. And rather than have the top management tell what they need, we actually take the students, the 3-year graduates, back to their home base and work on curriculum changes.
Vivian, I want to turn to you. You sort of have two hats here. As president of the General Motors Foundation, you're a funder of many educational ventures, and you grew up in a rural setting, so you understand both rural and urban issues for our state, and you also sit around a corporate table and hear the issues regarding the workforce. So what do you think about the educational system and this partnership with employers, and how can we strengthen that in ways that rebound positively for all people of Michigan?
Thank you, Luann. First of all, the system, I think we all have to realize the system is what it is, and it's probably time out to put blame in terms of who did what, and just understand it is what it is, and we all have to understand what our needs are as funders as well as corporations. And from General Motors' perspective, we evaluated the educational system here in Michigan and really in the country, and realized that our company is obviously a global company. We're now competing for talent on a global basis. But of course, we're headquartered here in Michigan. We're headquartered here in Detroit. So when you look at our educational system here in Michigan and in Detroit, we realize that in order for General Motors as a company, for our name to rise to the top, for individuals literally all over the world to view General Motors as a company in a very positive way, that we also have to change the education community in the state of Michigan. So we realized that there was a major gap when it came to STEM, which is one of the areas that we recruit from, obviously. When you look at the manufacturing industry and what was required 20 years ago versus what's required now, from a battery technology perspective, from a hybrid technology perspective, in the infotainment community, all of the needs, manufacturing 20 years ago versus what it is today is like night and day. I mean, the whole industry, like many industries are, it's like night and day. Even when you look at our cars, the difference between 20 years ago versus what we have now is night and day. So we're looking for individuals that obviously that are innovators, and of course individuals that are technology focused, because we need to, of course, stay ahead of the curve when it comes to making a difference not only in our manufacturing units, but also in our vehicles. So from a funder's perspective, we look to see what we need as a company and then move forward to try to make a difference when it came to education from a K through 12 perspective. And that's why we provided a $27.1 million grant to the United Way to provide funding for K through 12. But in addition to that, we have a number of programs that we support, like a World in Motion, E-Car, PACE. There are a number of other programs that are built into different K through 12 units that support encouraging individuals and our young people to want to become involved in STEM. We try to make it sexy, attractive for them to want to be a part of it. But that's what we do from K through 12. But then we move to post-high school. And we then realize that there's a need in our post-K through 12 unit to get more individuals going to college and graduating in the STEM area. So we developed our Buick Achiever Scholarship Program, where we provide up to a $25,000 grant for individuals that are majoring in the STEM area. And we also provide up to a $2,000 grant for individuals that, for 1,000 scholarships for individuals that are majoring in the STEM area. So that's 1,100 individuals on an annual basis where we're making a difference, or at least trying to make a difference.
Joe, you're the president of an independent electricity transmission company. You and I met on a Council for Competitiveness study on energy sustainability, and part of that was that America could be energy independent, if not an exporter. That seems to be more in the realm of possibility than when you and I met, but a lot of that conversation was about the range of the workforce for an important sector of our country in terms of energy. So how do you think about that workforce, the gaps, and what we need to do going forward?
Well, I think, like the other speakers, I'll give you just a real quick snippet, because that's when you and I met. That if you remember, I was, I hate to use these words, I was on a mission to basically tell the rest of the world that we had some major problems, and especially in the energy sector, and I specifically am talking about the high voltage electric transmission grid in the United States. And here was the problem that we faced, and for those of you who don't know, that ITC started business 10 years ago, and we started business with no employees. And we bought a grid, and people are not interested when something's wrong with the grid for you to answer the phone and say, well, we just started a business. I really don't have enough employees to cover this problem right now, but give me a couple of years and I'll call you back. And if you remember 10 years ago, just so I can get this all in perspective for you, we started business in March of 2003, and in August of 2003 is when we had the blackout. So it would be unacceptable for us to tell you we can't service the problems we have. The first problem that I had is the equipment that we had bought and the system we had bought is very old. I mean, very old, and it had an average age of somewhere around 45 years old, and that was in 2003. The next problem I had is, as I tell everybody in a kind of a joking way, is all the people who have familiarity with this system look like me, meaning that they're old. And there was not a good there's not a good feeder stock of new employees. Number three, our next problem that we had is, well, gosh, I mean, I'll tell you, how many of you think doing high voltage electric transmission work is sexy? Okay, so what you find out into the college world is virtually no universities teach power engineering anymore. They're very far and few between, and it's a very limited stock. And if you look across the country, you have a lot of utilities who have the same age workforce that I was faced with. I couldn't recruit out of the utilities to get people to come and work for me, or anybody with experience. The only people I could get was those who were retired. And I'd say, hey, you want to come and work for me for a couple more years and help me Band-Aid this up? I'll go out and recruit new people. That was a problem, because the people I could recruit, now I'm not going to be able to recruit somebody who's 30 years into their career and get them to leave and give up their retirement and everything and come and work for me. On the other side of the coin, I'm not going to be able to get the young people coming out of schools because as I would say, the pickings were slim. And to exacerbate that problem, it was exactly the same problem we had with our field people. And so I've set out on a mission to tell people that there is a lot of work to be done. The systems that we have here are no different than they are the rest of the United States. They're old and they're antiquated. Oh, the next problem is the new equipment that you replace the old equipment with, the people you have today aren't qualified to work on the new equipment because it's all computer-based technology. It's state-of-the-art, just like everything else. And I tell people, things did change over the last 45 years. So what did we have to do? And this was a matter of necessity. We've had to hire people and train them. We've had to do the additional work to give them the additional education that they need. Then we have to go and we have to do, and I was so glad to hear Governor Schneider talk about it, is that we had to also go out and start to recruit the people and train the people and get the people trained to be those field people that actually work on this and realize that we're working in a different world today. The equipment is different than the stuff that we have. There's nobody really all that trained in how to train them. So we had to work with our community colleges to help set up training programs. We had to then face the next reality, and this is the one that's frustrating, is the people that we could get that were interested in working on these field jobs, if you will, lacked a lot of the basic math skills that they needed. And so as I started off and kind of went down this food chain, it's like I was running through a maze, and every time I thought I was getting something solved, I just kept coming back to the fundamental problem that we're not training the people in the areas that they need to be trained in. We're not giving a lot of career opportunities and thought processes to the people. You know, for people who talk about, you know, that we need skilled trades, these are not low-paying jobs. And if you think they're low-paying jobs, I just got my BlackBerry went off before I came out here today, and somebody just sent me the pictures of the floods we're dealing with in Iowa. And the fact of the matter is that there'll be crews working there around the clock to restore stuff. And these people work under extreme conditions, but the training is so critical. So my whole thing has been make the country aware of it, try to get people back in this business because we have a huge infrastructure problem in this country, and the people that we need to fix it are not there.
I want to sort of take a bit of your comment, Joe, and turn it a bit, because you talked about mathematics as a skill set needed for very technical field jobs. Now, it's also needed for the most sophisticated STEM role jobs in the world. So how do we begin to think about this conversation differently? Because people say, you know, I'm not going to be the research scientist, I'm not going to be the engineer, but how do we convey that they still need mathematics? And how do we talk about the world of the technical skills? In my day, it would be called vocational ed. But how do we think about those as really high-tech jobs now?
Well, the skill sets that I was talking about is we had to get to Algebra 2. Okay, and I was appalled when I found out that they didn't have those skills. And the statement I have said is that, you know, for specialized training, companies like myself, the ITC, we're willing to do all the training that we need to make our people functional and so that they can work on the equipment and safe and all the provisional training. But we shouldn't have to be paying again to get them to the basic math skills that it takes. And these jobs today, I mean, I will just give you, I was talking with one of the gentlemen that we work with just before we came up here. And I said, people don't realize that, you know, 15 years ago, 25 years ago, if somebody broke into one of our linemen's trucks and stole his wrenches, well, that was the way it was. Well, today it's a computer. And that computer has access to the grid. And that's exactly what cyber attackers are trying to get. So it's a different world we live in. And they can take control of things in ways that we don't know. And so that skill set is totally different, and that training is so critical that we get it. But they have to have an understanding of the basic math skills to do the job yet.
Jim, I'll turn it to you, because you're sort of in the vortex of that conversation.
Yeah, I think some of the things that Joe is saying is absolutely correct. I mean, fundamental math skills and fundamental foundation skills are very important for all jobs. Let's get that straight. And I think he's right that there should be a division between what's going on inside the companies in terms of education and training and what are the responsibility of the public sector. Figuring that out is what I think really what Bill is doing and what I've seen in good partnerships, i.e. Good partnerships are when business and educators take a long-term approach, and they sit down and they go over the kind of painful things that you probably have gone through, which is to figure out what are the actual needs. You know, employers say communication skills. Okay, what exactly does that mean? Everybody knows how to talk, right? I think.
Or text.
Or text, right. But what I've learned now, after talking with employers for quite a long time, as Dr. Simon mentioned, the real communication skills that employers are looking for are often project management skills, being able to take a job and finish it on time, being able to be responsible. Those are often things that we have to embed in our K through 12 education system and embed in what we do in the community colleges. It's also something, and I think this is where I think we'll all agree, it's also something that you learn at the workplace. And you learn through internships, you learn through bringing people in, and that I think the good education that we all do as public institutions is an education which is based on not only understanding what the current needs are, but also through interaction with the workplace, what the future needs might be. And here again is where the importance of our research universities and the kind of work that Michigan State University does, University of Michigan, and all our major four-year institutions. They kind of are on the Border Scouts looking ahead. So getting this as a system and figuring out our roles is, I think, very fundamental for the process, but it's going to take some involvement of business and in education, and we often talk about that as a partnership, but it's also going to take some time. And this is, I think, another problem that we have when we often talk about education and employers. Employers come to us saying, we want to hire 10 people now. Macomb Community College, as well as most educational institutions, we're looking 3 or 5 years out, changing our programs. Coming up with something now is important, and we can do it, but what would be good is to know 3 to 5 years down the road, where are things going, and how we develop that kind of long-term perspective. And that's something which really is a kind of local phenomena, and it's the kind of thing we can do in Macomb County, our county executive, our school systems, our educational, the community college as educational institution, working together becomes important. So I think we need to talk a little bit about criteria for partnerships and how real partnerships evolve.
That would be, to go to Bill and Vivian. So if you were to lay out 2 or 3 criteria for a great partnership, what would they be? Because we've sort of talked past this a bit. So what would those criteria be that we could all take away as a lesson from this conference?
Well, first, go ahead.
Another program that has been very beneficial in the automobile industry, we provide research grants to a number of colleges and universities. And in addition to the research grants, we've also provided vehicles for these institutions to utilize. For instance, the e-car program. That's a program where students actually work to try to figure out, come up with ideas as to how vehicles will have less of an impact on the environment. And these young kids are very bright, and they come up with very bright ideas. But we provide vehicles for them to utilize for research, but also research grants, and provide projects for these students to work on. Not only is that helping us as a company, but it's also helping the school with grant money to really go past what they can traditionally provide in terms of support. They have grant money to provide for the kids, for the students to go beyond what's expected of them in these different programs. So that has been very beneficial to us as a company. And in addition to that, we provide other grants, program grants for these universities where kids can actually go out and do things in the community too, that's also going to help with coming back with very creative ideas. We have major partnerships in terms of research grants. We provide some grants with through Michigan State University of Michigan, the College for Creative Studies, Michigan Tech, and many others. But this is just one example of how we, not only the university is helping us from a research perspective, but also we're helping the universities in terms of being able to expand what they're capable of doing.
Now, we're supposed to make this a little provocative, I think.
Right, you are. So jump right
You all
in.
brag about all these great programs you have, and they're wonderful, and you put a lot of time and resources into it. But I know in our section of the state, I happen to be involved in our economic development group, and we make the rounds to the employers there, and you ask any employer today, do you have openings? Absolutely. We've heard it here at this conference. Do you have openings that cannot be filled because you don't have skilled people? Yes, we do. That tells me that this system is not working. And we don't have 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. People are ready to hire people now to meet demands of customers in the months ahead. So we've got to be more responsive to that.
And let me just echo that. In the absolute downturn of the economy at the bottom, and here we are in Michigan with high unemployment, we have trouble recruiting engineers into our company. Absolutely, the openings were there, we just couldn't get them. And you would say that there had to be a plethora of them here because the automotives had let people go, the unemployment rates are high, yet we couldn't get them. And the ones that, you know, and we've hired those students, some of them were foreign, they didn't have their green card or whatever that piece of paper is that they need. And guess what? We start to lose them one by one. So we've got some big holes as to from where we're at to where we need to be. That's on the professional side. One of the things I'd like to say, and I'd like to challenge everyone else out here, because we were talking before I came out, and we were trying to figure out who came from the most rural part of the United States. And,
we were having a contest.
And we never did get that settled, but I still think I win that. There's a huge gap on the availability of education, especially for people in the rural part of the United States. They don't have everything on an equal access. I know we're talking about the city of Detroit and some of the education here in Michigan in general. But the most important thing that I think we can do in business is far better than funding, far better than all the other things we do. And while those things are important, is we need to provide mentorship for people that don't have visions of what it means to be an engineer, what it means to be a pipe fitter, for God's sake, what it means to be someone who works in the skilled trades or is an accountant. Because if you don't know what it looks like, it's hard to aspire to be it. And so I think that that's the most important thing. I told the story when I grew up, the two most successful people I knew was my uncle, who retired from the Air Force with a 20-year pension, and I thought, boy, that was pretty cool. He was 39 and retired. I could do that. And then was the local farmer. And it wasn't until I got myself kicked in the backside by my grandparents to really start to pursue going to college. So that mentoring is so critical, especially for people who have no idea, and I think it's something we can all do.
One of the things I want to be, again, come back, so I'm thinking about a world that's moving very, very rapidly. And in my lifetime, tractors stayed about the same for a very long time, and then all of a sudden, the technology of agriculture it just changed. And you have to be a scientist, and you've got to be a computer technician, you've got to be lots of things. So how do we speed up this discussion and develop some trust among ourselves that lets us recognize that there is a little bit of lag time in getting faculty and getting programs together, and I think maybe we can speed that up. At the same time, we need to be having a conversation about not what you need today, but also what you're thinking about, going back to the point, a few years from now, so we can really put that image in kids' heads so that they're not working for last year's job. And that's part of the issue of mathematics, it's part of the issue of some of these skill sets, and get them really excited about the tomorrow jobs.
Yeah, if I could say something about going back to the skill gap issue, because I think that's often misunderstood quite a bit by a lot of us. And one of the reasons why some students are not going into programs is in fact not them, but their parents, and their parents' perception of what is a success and what is a successful career. And the reason, and let's use skilled trades as a good example, because I agree with you. There's jobs in skilled trades, there's very good work, high-paying jobs, et cetera. But there are also jobs which are considered often in the society not that, quote, status was, you know, and that you have to think about, and as parents looking at the rise and fall of the auto industry and the kind of volatility, you know, they're telling kids that their kids get a stable job. It may not make as much, but you'll progress longer. And I think, you know, as employers, you have to understand that for students, often they look at their parents, they look at their parents' careers, and they do exactly what you did with your uncle. You see what's positive and negative about the people around you. That's where I certainly agree with you. Mentors and navigators, and one of the things that we really need in education is that for most of our staff, even though we pride ourselves on how much we hire people out of the industry and we try to be as close as possible to the community, we ourselves need, you know, often individuals from the industry to tell us where things are going, where that tractor is going to be in the next 5 or 6 years. So I think some of the work that has to go on in a model partnership is not just the work between business and education in terms of institutions, but it's also figuring out how business and educators talk to parents who then talk to students. And that pipeline gets, I think, developed that way.
Bill, you want to be more provocative?
Yeah, so, you know, here we're telling students what they ought to do so that they can be productive in the workforce. It's their responsibility. And I think where we're falling down is that we're not giving them a chance to learn firsthand what it's like to have a job. So I listened to Governor Snyder one time when he came to our business leaders group, and he says, I enjoy my days when I get to go over to the Capitol. And we thought, well, he's meeting in all these committees with all these legislators. He says, no. Between meetings, I get to see all these young school kids who just swarm through the Capitol and learn all about our government. Well, let's teach them about our business. So why not have them into our companies in the form of internships? So I challenged my company to, you know, we've tried to set these up before, but it's always on our schedule or their schedule, and it never works out. So these are great plans that we say are going to work, and maybe you're going to have 30 or 50 interns, and you end up with a few because of schedule conflicts and everything else. No, we're going to bake this into the system, and we're going to do that at our company so that these young kids starting in high school, but more importantly also in these colleges, have a time to come and get a job and see what it's like. And then they can decide for themselves what they need. Mm-hmm. So rather than have us tell them or somebody else tell them or some not-for-profit group tell them what they ought to do, they could find out for themselves and be responsible for their own futures. And I think that business, though, has to be recognized that we've got to commit the resources to be able to do that. But I think actual internships or jobs that really count, not just looking over somebody's shoulder for a few hours a day, but a real job that makes a difference, will help people then determine what they need themselves, given their skill levels, for career planning.
But it also needs to be from a two-way street in terms of corporations having educators understand what the needs are and educators understanding what corporate needs are. I think we are hiring individuals without having educators understand what our needs are. Educators are educating students without understanding what the needs are. I mean, when was the last time an educator went to a manufacturing facility to truly understand? I mean, in Michigan, we're a major manufacturing community. When was the last time we had our presidents of the colleges and universities in Michigan go into our facilities and visit and truly understand the wave that we're going in, the future that we are headed in terms of technology? And when you think about it, it should really be ongoing training for these universities and colleges should really be providing ongoing training. I thought about a couple of days ago about our aircraft controllers. Do you think they're being trained on a regular basis? I mean, we are all probably putting ourselves in harm's way when it comes to a lot of things, because I would suspect that in a lot of these cases, individuals are not continuing the training that they need to really stay ahead of the curve in many of these industries. But I think it should be a two-way street, and we should understand corporations should make sure that educators understand what our needs are, and educators that are providing the service should understand what they should be training and how they should be training individuals.
And I want to leverage off of one other thing. And again, I was really happy when Governor Schneider said it at the lunch meeting that they had today. The number of young people that have been sponsored in the FIRST program, and for those of you who don't know what FIRST is, I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's robotics competition at the high school level. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, my son would have not become an electrical engineer had it not been for FIRST, because he was sitting there and he was really enthralled with video games, and go figure that out. He wasn't too excited about what I did as a profession because he thought I worked too hard. And the fact of the matter is that he, for the first time, got to be excited about being a geek. I hate to say that about my son, but it's the thing. So if you think about a school system and you think about everything else, what's the most celebrated thing that goes on there? Sports. Mm-hmm. It's got its whole dedicated section in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. The people we look out here, and you know, I'm not against these athletes. I think they're great. I wished I was as good as them, but the fact of the matter is I'm not. And I tried to be. I couldn't dribble, and so I just learned to shoot. But the fact of the matter is that the first competition was the first time that these people get together, and for my son, it was one of these experiences that he had where they were competing with their robots against other robots, and then there's a huge celebration that's going on. And I thought how neat that would be, not only for those people that are in the technical disciplines, but for all the rest of the disciplines that go on out there. I couldn't even imagine what you do with accounting, but some of you people out there figure it out for me and make it exciting.
Become a business plan competition for an entrepreneur. They can all...
Well, you know, but the fact of the matter is these guys become entrepreneurs, and those people who we allow them to unleash their creative juices and have excitement about the things that they are interested in and unleash themselves, because it's just not cool, in school. And we've got to make these things, not only give them the mentoring that they need to show them what those jobs are, but we've got to let them be cool and be proud of what they're going to be part of. And I think, this isn't the same as saying everybody's got to get a trophy. Everybody's got to get to compete for the trophy, doggone it, and be in there and have an excitement about doing it. And I think we'll get a lot better turnaround. But right now, they don't have the mentoring, they don't have the vision, and they don't get the excitement around these careers.
So one of the takeaways is we need to find a number of activities where people can be cool and proud and rewarded for not only technical skills, but some of those soft skills, communication, team building, other things that are also so critical for the workplace.
And
other takeaways, we've got a couple more minutes, so other takeaways.
We're talking about the jobs that exist now, and certainly the companies that need, talent. But there also is a real need in Michigan for more jobs and entrepreneurial development. And one of the things which I was very impressed with in the this morning when our research universities issued a study that indicated that graduates from Michigan State, University of Michigan, and Wayne State University tend to be more entrepreneurial, form businesses more than other states. And I think that's really an important point that we can't miss. In other words, we're not just educating and training people for the jobs that exist, we're educating and empowering them to make choices to develop new industries and new growth. And how we do that, as well as, and how businesses help us do that, becomes, I think, an important additional factor that we have to consider. So it's not just preparing between education and business for what exists, it's also providing the support for people to take risks to see what will develop.
So we're really nearing the end of the session, and one of our tasks was to do some very specific sort of takeaway messages. So how would you want to summarize your takeaway messages in sort of the minute you have? You're like a TEDx competition for our kids. You got 1 minute to really put your punch through.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Well, from a funder's perspective, I believe there's a real, true desire to make a difference when it comes to education in the state of Michigan. and you have foundations and corporations, individuals, everybody. We all want to do something to make a difference, but there's so many models out there. There's so many programs out there. We don't know which one is best. So it's very difficult to put your money into something when you truly do not understand or know what's going to work. And I don't know what we can do about that as a state, but I think that's a major issue from a funder's perspective. So currently, we've put our money, we've done a little research and put our money in the programs we believe are the best. But when you have so many out there, it's so many models out there and so many organizations competing, it's difficult to understand who's really making a difference.
Okay. Anybody else want to volunteer?
Yeah, I think the fundamental issue is to start with a common agreement.